Hello and
Hello.
welcome to the stage, Kevin, and to your presentation. So
Thank you.
everybody, Kevin is from Canada and currently living in Singapore, and he is a global nomad that is going to be teaching us a whole lot today and helping us to discover what our global nomad mindset is. Kevin, before we go straight into presentation, can we just see that you've got your slides sorted? And otherwise, I can just mention a few other important bits while you get your slides running.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And while
Whoops.
Kevin's doing that, getting his slides up, Kevin has most generously offered all of the delegates here today a free chapter on his book, The Global Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long. And I will be sharing the link to the chapter of his ebook with all of you after this presentation. How are you doing there, Kevin?
I'm fine. I have it up. Do you see it?
I see it. It's not in presentation mode, but the slide is clear. If you
So,
guys want to just give us a thumbs up if the slides are easy to see and read. Can you guys see the Varan can, Inika can, Deborah can, Megan? Use those thumbs, guys. Okay, so Kevin, your slide is absolutely fine the way it is. I don't want to worry too much about getting it into slide presentation mode. There are
okay.
4 arrows on your top right-hand corner for those who would like to enlarge the screen for the slides that will then take up your whole screen. Kevin, I'm really excited to hear what you're going to be teaching us today and hearing from you. Thank you so much for being a speaker on this platform today. And I would like to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for that lovely introduction. And I want to really say that today has a very special moment to be here with the community that you have in South Africa. I have never spoken to a community in Africa, actually, and so I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share with you, which I believe that you will be very connected to. And it is very, very because of what the nomadic mindset is. And so I'm going to share with you today a presentation which will help you shift, I believe, your perspective. And we're in a big change of today. And I believe that we need to be able to be much more adaptable, agile, as we all know, and everybody is saying within organizations. But we need to have a mindset which is going to take us into the next evolution. Now, Adria, can you play the video now? I'd like to introduce and start with a video. Yes, and so I start with this. Are you ready to change, transform, and evolve? Are you ready, truly ready? Because this is something that is often not the case, that we're ready. We are in a situation today of where we've had a lot of changes and a lot of difficulties, and we all, as the video says, and I would like to share that I believe that this has got a lot to do with disruption. And disruption is one of the things in our lives that is always there. And this is one of the things that nomadic cultures understand very clearly. And we all, and especially in South Africa, you're always being disrupted in so many different ways. And you have in your history so many different ways. And so this disruption, can it bring negativity? Yes. Can it bring positivity? Yes, as well. So it is really something extremely important to understand where we're going with all of this. And we've been through a period of where we have had a lot of problems, and that's what we're seeing today. And it's the increase in mental health issues, reduced engagement, brain drain, loss of purpose, remote work disconnect, exhaustion, lack of social connection, the great resignation. All of these things are problems which are existing for all of us in organizations all around the world. And so it's not just typical to South Africa. You have your own spice of it in your own way. But we have it here in Singapore. We have an incredible amount of mental health issues. And do we have reduced engagement? Yes. We have people resigning. We have people, a lot of these are to deal with the purpose. People, as we all know, have found during COVID, this is a new world. This is a different way of seeing things, working in different ways. But they realize that their life is important, getting their life back. and at the same time doing something which is purposeful. And it also is something which brings into the whole point of the pain which is created, all these uns in our world, the unpredictable, the unfulfilled, unsupported, unpopular, unraveled, uncomfortable, unsettling, unclear, knowns, unknowns, uncertainty, unmotivated. But if you take away the we get the beautiful part of it, and that is really what we're looking for: the supported, popular, fulfilled, predictable, maybe not so predictable, but we can a bit, settling, possibly, comfortable, clear, knowns. The knowns are only the past, but motivated, absolutely. So we can take away, that's where we move forward into today, and just to look at things from a different point of view. Now, in this point of view, I want to ask you, what do you think is your biggest challenge today with you or your organization? And I want you to think about what that is and you're facing today. And you can put it in the chat box if you wish, but I will need to stop my sharing. But Adri, if you could help me to find out what some of the biggest challenges people are having or their organization, if you could share those with me. Stagnation, micromanagement, adapting to the new normal, burnout, trying to keep culture and engagement high with remote working. Yes, being alone, hybrid work model, preventing and managing stress. All of these things are absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Rosa, saying technology. Charnel, resistance to change. Sarika, Inik, staying connected and feeling part of the company. Yes. Ashley, as HR, finding that employees not doing their jobs, we were hired for just their salary. Ushta, saying still having to work hard to own my own space as a woman. Really, really interesting. And these are all things which are existing with us. But I would like you to stay very open to what is today, because I want to share with you something which I think is very, very important for all of us, and that is a mindset. Now, because of the changes, because of the disruptions, because of all of these things that challenges, we need to start by accepting. There's a disruption which creates an acceptance that there's something that is changing. And then we need the resilience to be able to adapt. Now, I'm told by my friend Alison Godinier that people in South Africa, that's all, she says, this is all we know is resilience. And that you can teach the world is how to be resilient. You have such power in understanding this on an ongoing, everyday basis. Whereas many, many countries don't understand resilience because they're too comfortable. And so this is something that is a marketable piece for you, is what is the South African way of being able to be resilient and adapt that to the world today. I think that is a nice market for you as well. But when I was in Mongolia working on my book, the leadership book, The Nomadic Mindset for Never Settle for Too Long, a lady said to me, there's a Mongolian proverb, and it says, if a lake is not changing the water, it will go stagnant. Change is important. What this period has brought to us, and I know in South Africa you've been through many, many periods, and even within periods of changes and challenges. However, we need to move past that as well, understanding the past and understanding where we can go, where we are now and where we can go forward. And so this is a big piece. Now, the other piece, which I think is extremely important, is that what Einstein said, he said, we cannot change our problems with the same thinking we used to create them. And I'd like to share with you that I believe that what has happened is that we are operating on old industrialized mindsets and agriculturalist mindsets. And what we have forgotten is some of the nomadic mindset, which is lived in our indigenous beings and our beings forever. And it is important for us to look at what that is. But to be able to change, we need to start thinking about our mindset. And even in organizations, in HR, when you start hiring, are you looking at mindset or just are you looking at skills? That is one thing. But during my research, I asked a fellow and he said, you can have the same people doing the same skills and the same talent for the same skills, but they will not enact them, and their mindset will not enact them in the same way. So it's about looking at what those are, but looking about what is the potential that possibly can happen. And so we need to shift our mindset. And that is from the old operating systems, which we're doing. And I also have this old, very old operating system, I have to say. And it's about shifting. And that's not so easy. And that's where the fear comes in the change. Do you know, in change, when I was with variety, when I was doing my research, I would ask first world questions like, because thinking of organizations. And I was thinking, I asked the question, how do you deal with change? And often I would get this very sort of blank look of like, are you stupid or something? What is the problem? And so one of them said to me, I don't understand why you're spending the energy just thinking about change. He said, change happens all the time. It just does. And we know that logically, but something has got in our ways, the fears of it, the risk that it takes. All of these things are in a mindset, but they're not in the nomadic mindset. So I'm going to share with you and uncover what is the nomadic mindset so that can help you to see a different perspective so that you can see, is it something that is interesting for me? Is it something that is value creation for our organization and especially in the HR world or leadership world? And I believe that there is a huge impetus because my research shows that 80% plus corporate leaders, HR professionals, coaches agree the nomadic mindset is the mindset most needed for the next evolution. And I have done a test and polls and a lot of the speaking that I've done, and it's interesting, and I will share with you a little bit more when I talk about mindsets, that this is such a valuable piece of information to move forward with. But let's move on. And I would like to share with you one of the comments by Kathy Harmon, and she said, be prepared for a new perspective that is both simple and profound and will leave you saying, I want that in my life. I find this really interesting because this is exactly what other people have said to me as well, and organizations, that I really want this in my life. It also has shifted and changed my life. It has given me license and freedom to my life so that I don't hold in my rigidity of what I was supposed to do by family and telling me I must do this and must do that and must do that. No, it's given me freedom because I felt out of the box. I felt odd. And that is one thing that is helpful for people. So think about that as an HR professional. How can this not only improve your life, but the employ of your employees, this being simple and profound in our very complex world? I'm going to share with you 4 navigational paths to the nomadic mindset. 1 is connecting the dots of your safari, the movement of the mind, the 3 mindsets, nomad, builder, and settler, and think vastly, act narrowly. Now, these are quite poetic in its way. And also you will think, they're very simple. Yes, but you know what? We think in a very complex world, and this is the simplicity of what we need to take to be able to find new paths forward. So let me share with you my story and my safari, but I don't do it just because I'm sharing you what I've done. I want to share it with you as an example of what is in your life of connecting the dots, in your organization of connecting the organizational dots, connecting the dots as you as an HR professional within your team. And you can also see it as different teams connecting those dots. You can connect the dots on a project and you also give a debrief at the very end. But we're not talking about the headlines. The connecting the dots from the nomadic mindset is going below what they say the iceberg, the level of the iceberg, into the bottom part. It is not looking at only the gloss, the shiny objects of the top. So let us go. When I grew up on a beautiful lake on the west coast of Canada. This is the lake that I grew up in. This is the house that I grew up in, and this is what I would do every day. However, when I started school, my family decided to move on, and they moved on to a big city. And so the city I went, and of course I did school, but I also studied to become a skater and a figure skater. And I went along and as a figure skater, and I became better and better. I won competitions. I lost competitions. I was bullied. I certainly had a lot of situations where I had to deal with political scenarios, and I couldn't figure it out as a kid because I thought if you did your best, you would always you will get the reward from it. And I realized many years later, that's not necessarily the case. But at the same time, it gave me tenacity. And eventually I became a Canadian champion. Now you see, that's somebody with a hair. I didn't have any hair now, and I have a beard. So therefore, something has moved on, not only in my physical being, but also that. But at some point, my partner and I decided to split up, even though we were the wunderkinds, apparently, of ice dancing in Canada at the time. This was back in the dark ages. But my father passed away, and skating is a very expensive sport. And I decided and thought about it, and I thought it's time for me to move on. So I did. And I moved on, and I moved to New York as a dancer. I danced. I learned to dance, and there was such an incredible time of learning and exploring and finding new way of being in a sixth sense by living in New York. But at some point, I thought, okay, I need to move on, because something inside of me said, move on. I moved to Paris, and I became a dancer at the Moulin Rouge. Many of you probably know the Moulin Rouge. I was a can-can dancer for there, and it was an amazing time. And I learned an awful lot about Paris and France and French and so many different ways. And I had spent late nights after doing the can-can and doing shows, and 2 a.m, we would go out to parties, and we go to the big clubs, and being with terrorists, or we would be with artists, or we would be with dancers, or we would be with people that were very wealthy. We would mix with the variety of the communities of life. But at some point, something inside of me said it was time to move on. After that, I moved back to Canada. And in Canada, then I became an elite choreographer for national, world, and Olympic figure skating champions. And in that, it was such a wonderful world of helping others become the best that they could be. And that was something that was so important to me as a coach, but also as a choreographer, is what can I pull out? What is the jewel that I can pull out of that individual? And so I would do this. And at some point, I had a lot of acclaim. And then I had this one opportunity, and that was to choreograph and direct the closing ceremonies for the Olympic Games. You couldn't have wanted such a large production. The large production of your life is to be able to do this. I mean, 2 billion viewing audience, 60,000 live. It was an amazing achievement to be able to do this, to work with teams, to really collect teams, to understand teams, to work with different mindsets as well. And talents, and skills as well. But something inside of me said that that's not everything. It's time for you to move on. So I moved on, and I moved on, and I moved to spend time with doing I started to become a choreographer for very large productions, multi-million-dollar productions of figure skating. And at the same time, I was collecting and developing teams and directing the show. And this was all so very exciting to me. And it wasn't just about the show and about what the client wanted. It was about the people and bringing the people together so they could honor their talents and they could be the best they could be. And that was so exciting. But at some point, all of that, something inside of me said, move on. I did a show, and I was fired. I did a big show, a very big show for Disney on Ice. And when we were in rehearsal, the producer came in, and he said, I want to see some of the production. I showed it to him. He pulled me into a room in the back of the ice rink, a small room, smelly change room. And he sat me down and he says, I don't like what you're doing. I want you to pack up your skates, go out the back door, and don't come back, and do not talk to anyone. At that point, my world collapsed. I was fired. I'd never been fired before. I didn't know what to do. I wondered what was going on. So I slowly recovered. Slowly, when I say it took me 6, 7, 8 months to recover, I slowly took one step forward to reach out into society, into working as a trainer and as a coach and a choreographer again, because I was so embarrassed in many ways. And then through a lot of development and creativity, I started to bring back my creativity. And then I met my guru, and I began meditation and understanding of meditation. And at some point during that time, I discovered why I was fired. I was fired because my ego was too high. I was fired because I wasn't listening to my own heart. I was fired because I wasn't listening to my own voice. And I wasn't listening to my body because I became very injured with sciatica during this whole time, which was stress. And I decided at that point that I would not do another production unless it came from my heart. And that's what I did, and that's what I do today. And when I don't, I know I get into trouble, and I laugh, and I go, okay, I've already solved this. But this is about going nomading to discover our insides. And from there, I did another big production, and of course, working with teams, very big. And then at some point, I was now into coaching at the EU, and I was also speaking, and I was doing training. But at some point during that journey, something inside of me said, this is boring. I don't have a real purpose. I want to produce my own work. And so I stopped working for a third-party training company. And I started to figure out what was it that I loved and what I liked very much. And all of a sudden, the word global nomad appeared. And at the same time, it collided with me meeting with a mentor to find out what is my speaking topic. And I told him that I'm a global nomad, and he said, oh, that's really interesting. Let's look at what nomad means. And we discovered what nomad meant. And he said, well, let's figure out what this book is, because this is really fascinating. He says, and I said, the book is called The Nomadic Mindset. And he said, fantastic. He said, I've never, ever heard anyone talk on this, so it's a great subject. And he said at that point, if you don't do anything with this in the next year, I am taking this subject and doing it. All of a sudden, I became stressed at that point, and I went, no one's going to take this from me. And so I decided to go on the journey. And then the journey has taken me to Mongolia. It's taken me to work with the Maasai and spend time also in Morocco, in the Sahara, the Berbers of the Sahara in the southern Morocco. And also I spent some time just before COVID in Namibia with the Himba and the San. Learning about ancient wisdom and watching and observing and listening and being alert. These were all principles I realized were extremely nomadic. And those were the principles that they are able to do all at the same time. So from there, I began to speak on this subject. But every time something changed, something inside of me was saying, something is saying, move on. And so I moved on to the speaking. And also I went, as I said, in Mongolia, I was sitting in a yurt with Ravdan here. And I was asking him first still questions. And I asked him, I said, why do you migrate? And he says, we migrate because we follow the animals. And he says, we migrate because we want a better life. All of a sudden, my mind went like a ticker tape, a stock market ticker tape, looking and connecting and reconnecting all my life and all of the things that I'd done, but looking at the lower and lower, not just the headlines, but what was this life? And I realized at that point that I had a nomadic mindset. And why? Because what I was doing all these times was moving on. And people said to me, why are you moving on? You're just running away. You're running away from responsibility. You're running away from being successful. Why don't you just stay put? Stay put. And I couldn't agree with them. And so from that staying put, I realized on this day, in this question, that's what it was, a nomadic mindset. I was searching to expand myself, to explore, to find an evolution within myself. I was there about learning and growing. And my purpose came, and it's still the same. It is about bringing the stardom and the excellence out of individuals. And that's what I love to do most of all. So in this, my question to you is, there's a few things here. It's not just about my story. We all have stories, but you need to connect the dots. And sometimes it's a practice that is done in trainings to find out what were your what were your skills you were excellent at? What did people say about you? But you can take it as an overall of the organization, but looking, and it brings and bowls out the purpose, what is in that organization. And it may shift and change over time. But be able to do this is about going nomading within you, starting with you as an HR professional, you in your life, and then extending it out like a wave to all of the organization, the teams, and then all of the stakeholders further out, is understanding what is the interconnection, and not just the headlines, but what is below the surface. And that I invite you to do. One of the things that was very important in my coaching, and is found through this whole time, and I think that probably many of you have seen this, is that people are having a hard time to reflect. My client said, I would say, are you reflecting? He said, no, I don't have any time to reflect. And I said, well, what happens if you don't stop and take the time to reflect? And I would get a variety of answers. So, for example, I won't be able to really understand the creativity. I won't be able to lead properly. I won't be able to understand the issues of other people. So many different things. Reflection is extremely important. And it also gives you insight, which is extremely important, and the purpose, and then the growth. This is what connecting the dots does. But as it said at the very beginning, you need a nomadic mindset to connect the dots truly. Let us move on to navigational tool, path 2. So what is a nomad? This was part of my whole exploration, and probably what you want to know. You probably think, oh yeah, people say to me, oh, I have a nomadic mindset because I love to travel. And I said, no, not necessarily. I say it takes a different qualities and behaviors and the way you travel, perhaps. But it doesn't mean to say you have a nomadic mindset. But we all have it inside of us. So I went on a discovery to find out what the meanings of nomad were. But I was in Mongolia, and I was meeting a woman by the name of Batgarel Bat, and she was it was really cold. It was October 2017, and the chill of winter was in the air, and I could feel that really cutting razor edge against my skin. And with that, I understood that there was the cool, the chill. But I went to the Blue Sky Lounge in the hotel, and there was Batgarel, who I was to meet. She was head of the Branding Council of Mongolia at the time. And what I asked her was, what is the true meaning of nomad? But before I say what her meaning of it is, let me just back up. Nomos comes from ancient Greek, and it means pasture, and it means grazing. Modern Greek, nomas, means to wander, to roam. And the present French 15th century meaning of nomad is a group of people, a tribe that move from place to place without any solid home to find new, be able to find new food, not only for their animals, but for themselves, to survive. And well, many of you know about survival, understanding survival. We all know about survival. COVID has created this whole concept of we need to go back and figure out survival. Organizations do. But in survival, we cannot close down. In survival, we need to be wide and expand. But before we get there, let me share with you what Batgarel said. Batgarel said exactly the meaning that I told you. But Batgarel said, she says, that's not what it means. Now, Batgarel was this very vivacious woman, these big brown eyes that were so glistening, and a smile that was so big, and this deep and husky voice that was so sensual. And she was so effervescent. And she said, no, it means the movement of the mind. The movement of the mind, the movement of the mind. Now, isn't this fascinating? The movement of the mind, this is what the nomad means. That's what the nomadic mindset means. The movement of the mind. Yes. What has happened during COVID, our movement of our mind has become very blocked and locked and restricted and congested, a lot of it, for many people. They have gone into this mental shutdown in many ways. It is not open. It is not expansive. It's not fluid. It has become a challenge. I have been there myself. And I want to say that I was very anxious, and I had to create a path for myself to reduce the noise from social media, reduce the noise from media, reduce the noise from anything that was going on. And I need to spend the time and reflect, and to be able to open some space, just like cleansing your house, cleansing your desks. This is the movement. You need the movement of the mind to be fluid and flowing. So it's important with this nomadic mindset, when you are working as an HR professional, you yourself need to also engage in the movement of your mind so that you can engage with the people on the other side of hiring, or else the teams, or dealing with the C-suite. It's to be able to do, it's the movement of the mind and figuring out, listening. This is where deep listening skills come in. This is where being alert, this is where being curious is extremely important. But it's about movement. We are never not moving. And that is one thing that is so beautiful. And we've been restricted in our movement. Here in Singapore, we're incredibly restricted because we have a small country. You have a big country. You at least were able to move around from time to time. So yeah, movement of the mind. A client of mine said, during our process, and I believe it's this comment and this testimonial is not just about me. This is about all of us. If you look at the different areas of this, is what we want to do. As Kevin's not just a very experienced and committed coach, but nomad in mind and soul. All of you need to tap into that because you have it in you. He will guide. And if you say, I will guide you out of this tunnel, you may find yourself into daylight without any predetermined solutions or paths, adjusting spontaneously and empathetically to your needs and flowing along with your queries. This is what leadership is that you need to think about, is tapping into the nomad in your mind and soul, guiding the employees, guiding yourself, guiding all the stakeholders, all the way in the food chain, guiding them, adjusting your path along the way spontaneously, being able to free, not get locked in, and the flowing nature of this. This is the nomadic mindset. This is what you, as in actions and behaviors, want to take on, perhaps. And I'm sure that many of you are doing this unconsciously. But what if you were to bring it to a conscious level? What would it be like? What would happen to you? What would happen to the teams around you? What would happen to the communication? All these questions. Let's go to the mindsets now. Path 3. On my discovery, I realized that my bias was towards the nomadic mindset. But in my discovery and my research, I decided, no, this is too narrow. And there is an opposite to it. And the opposite became the settler mindset. And then there was the builder, because I was missing it. And in one of my interviews with a client or with an executive, he said, they're missing something. And he said, it's something to do with a builder. And so it became the builder. Now, in my research with all sorts of executives, they created the avatars of what these are through the different behaviors. We have strengths in these behaviors. We also have shadow sides in these behaviors. And in that chapter that you will be sent, you'll be able to go into it a lot deeper, and to be able to, and you can also reach out to me to ask questions. But let's just share with you what this is. Now, let's just say, for example, first of all, I want to say that these 3 live within all of you. And it's important in an organization to have all 3 to make it function. The numbers of percentage of people in these mindsets as a dominance may shift and over time because of what you need to create and innovate. So right now, people are still in the old mindset, the industrialized mindset, which I relate to the builder. The agriculturalist is to the settler. And still, there are way too many builders, and that's what this world is about. And when your organizations, you have builders, 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 and few nomads and more settlers to be the glue that are going to hold all this together. So let's just talk about it. So here, if you're building a house or a big, large apartment building, you need an architect. And an architect is what I would say the nomadic mindset. They start to look for the curiosity. What is this? They ask a variety of questions about what is this house? What are the environments you want? What are the spaces? Who's going to fill this house? All sorts of discoveries so that they can create. What's the feeling that you want? All of this becomes a nomadic way because you're curious. You're finding pathways. You're finding creativity. You're finding innovation. You're finding ideas. And you're being agile so that when you present it to a client, they say, oh no, this. And you have to be agile and adaptive to change it. You can't hold on. Hold on. No, don't hold on. But you need to build the house. So you hire builders and they take care of the fiduciary. They take care of the hiring the people. They take care of all of these things which are paramount. The suppliers, they deal with the suppliers. They are building, they are watching over it. There is a production manager. They are able to keep the teams going. They are the ones that have pushed the teams and to inspire the teams and to all this. This is the builder. But sometimes they get into the shadow side of where they push too hard and they become rather dictatorial, and it creates a lot of empathetic problems. The settler is the one that holds this building together. During, they are putting and holding the pieces together of the different types of tools that are to mean the different types of what is the word I want? Different types of skills that are needed for doing the basics of the work, the screwing the screws and things like that are the settlers. And they're the ones that have created this. They've held it together. They're the ones that have built, are the ones that are doing it. But also, they are the ones are the ones that will keep it together. In an apartment building, they are the ones that are going to be able to clean, and they're going to be able to able to do the security and all sorts of things. But these are the mindsets, different mindsets. And with those, there are certain things that settler doesn't like. They don't like uncertainty. So this is a bad time. They don't like risk. This is a bad time. Right now, they don't like unknowns. All these things of the uns, the settlers don't like so much. The nomads don't mind, because they understand that's where it comes from. But you might now start being able to think about your life, and you might just say how you are, and you might be one of those as a dominance. And we all have a dominance, we all have a subdominance. But we can play with all of them. We can change in one conversation, going from nomad to builder to settler. But we need to be consciously aware. Now, what would happen if you hired individuals on the mindsets? What you put teams together, not just on skill and their prowess, but on their mindsets. What if you were to do that? What would that do? What if you were to look at the position that you're hiring for and ask yourself, is this a skill set? What is the mindset for it to grow? This is an important factor. Do I have the right people in the right place at the right time? That is what's going to help engagement, because people will be doing what they love to do. So, one of the consultants I shared this with in a speech just not long ago, he said, for me, it is an eye-opener and inspiration to listen to you and your views of how we can learn from nomads. He said, I am a believer. And this is a Danish guy. I like the way you divided people, companies in different category stages, which really is very helpful when managing companies and people. This may be a testimony, as I said, about me, but it's not just about me. It is about all of us. And it's about listening to ourselves and listening to what is it's needed within an organization, with also our stakeholders. How do we interact and communicate and interconnect with all of these? So this is part of the nomadic mindset. And each one of you, I'm sharing this with you, not because it's about me, but because it's about all of us. every single one of us. And it's an informational part for all of us. So this is great. And I also have an assessment. But before we get to the assessment, I want to talk about Nokia. So in these mindsets, one of the things that's really important is that you can see the trajectory of an organization because of the mindsets that are at the top and what was driving it. So Nokia, I interviewed a fellow who worked for Nokia from 1990 to 2010. So really the 20 years of the bulk. He had a variety of directors' jobs and so he was very, very close to a lot of the CEOs and the C-suite and whichever. And so he was, and also the R&D and all sorts of things. And he said, in the first 10 years, they were very nomadic. They were doing lots of R&D. They also had what was called multimedia, which became smartphone. They did this in 1996. They had this information and they were developing it. And so for smartphones. But he said, what happened to 2000, he said, something changed. The CEO was still the same, but something changed. He said the shareholders, they wanted a shareholder value, which was very high. They wanted their bonuses. They wanted to have business, bottom line. And they became builders. And they forgot, even though under the surface was humming the R&D in the Nomad, but they weren't listening to the Nomads. They were just thinking of business. And then they became the huge market share of Nokia, which was very successful and wonderful. But they then moved, he said, into the settler. They started to settle and work on their prowess because now they were number one, but they were still building, but they were settling into their mindsets and creativity. A new CEO came in 2006, who was finance. So finance is really numbers, often is builder. And he said that we're not going to continue to do the R&D on multimedia. 2007, smartphone came out. And that was the beginning of the dinosaur for Nokia. Sold in 2010, I believe, to Microsoft. And then now they're starting to come up again in a lot of different aspects of, I think they're in fintech a little bit. And they're starting in the back end. So they are now creating a variety of other solutions. But if you follow what I said, you can look at the trajectory of where is your organization now? Where do you think they are? And why? And what can get them out of that? And what needs to shift and change? The people, the organization, the way you're thinking, the way you're looking at your teams, the way you're creating. What needs to shift? Yeah, so I leave that with you. But there is an assessment that I've created, and that it's an awareness assessment, and looking at what part of the journey that you are as an individual towards a nomadic mindset. And this is this is on my website, and we have this within one of our Go Nomading, one of our tools, and I use it in coaching as well, so that I get an idea, where is it? And I would like to say that we look at 3 different areas, and one of them is departure, discovery, and destination. Most people are in the discovery part. So let's move on. Navigational path number 4. Think vastly, act narrowly. I'm having a coffee in Mongolia with a young millennial student who is an urbanite, and her name is Bindaria. And she's talking about the nomadic life. She's saying that I'm longing for the Mongolian steppes and the wonderful rolling dunes of the Gobi Desert. She says, this is where freedom is. This is where agility is. This is where you have to build resilience because the environment is changing on an ongoing basis. Environment is changing on an ongoing basis. But I could see in her eyes that she was really longing for this. And then she said to me, Mongolian nomads, think vastly, act narrowly. Think vastly, act narrowly. This is one of the most important parts of the nomadic mindset you can have. And with this, you need to look at what is vast in the organization. Look at it from a wide point of view. Most of the time, we wake up in a very narrow point of view. We start our day in a very narrow point of view. We look at our projects in a narrow point of view. It's focusing, but we need to pull out. We need to see the big picture, the helicopter view, the bird's eye view. We need to go out there because that's the land of possibilities. That's the land of opportunities. That's the land of ideas and creation. And it's the land of people and understanding, a community. This is the land. And then you narrow in. She said they think vastly and then they make a decision and narrow in to make it happen. So it's this focus. This is part of the nomadic mindset. Part of what happens in coaching is people come to us in a constricted state, a congested state, a locked state, a narrow state. And we have to work through questions, curiosity, being alert, being still, all of these behaviors that are nomadic, all at the same time, to find out how we can get them open before they narrow in again. And that's the transformation. That's what you're going for. And that's the evolution, is then to be able to see and experience and to see what comes off in that energy and the smiles in their faces. That's thinking vastly, acting narrowly. A team leader, a young millennial team leader, sent this to me, which I believe is extremely, again, important, not just for me, but is important for all of us and also for clients. That he said, I was looking to increase my performance and resilience as a leader in an international and diverse environment. I was intrigued by the concept of the nomadic mindset, i.e., allowing us to think vastly and freely about challenges, and acknowledging that one needs to keep moving on in life. You in South Africa understand moving on in life. You understand that resilience. You understand that challenges. You understand, but you need to start clicking into not the old mindsets, the old operating systems, which can be non-inclusive, which can be non-diverse, that which can be very narrow. They need to be wide so that you can excel. And you have so much talent in South Africa. Look at the age range. The median is 27.1 years old. And I don't know the exact percentage, but I understand that it's incredibly high percentage of people under 30. And you have something like a 70% unemployment of those people. You're going to waste their lives if you don't help them to move forward. And they also can create and become entrepreneurs. And that is about thinking vastly and about freely, about challenges. We set out to explore and discover the vast opportunities available for me to reach my goals in my way. That's what we do. We go on a journey. I've taken you on a little bit of a journey today to discover what is the nomadic mindset. We've looked at 4 navigational paths. We've looked at the connecting the dots for your safari. We've looked at the movement of the mind. We've looked at the 3 mindsets, nomad, builder, and settler. And we've looked at thinking vastly, act narrowly. There is much, much more, but it lives within every single one of you. Every single one of you. Are you ready, as I started to say, to change, transform, and evolve? Are you ready as an organization to do this? Are you ready as teams to do this? With a purpose in mind and understanding that sustainability is what's going to drive organizations into the future, the sustainability and the footprint that everybody has. This is a devastation, sadly, of what's happening in the world of variety, but you're going to have also with the devastation, massive migration of your youth, and you will lose what is needed for your country to survive. You must find ways of integration and to be able to interconnect everyone. And it's there. Yes, you may say it's very difficult. I don't understand. You're right. I don't understand. It's historical. But you can do it. Every single one of you are part of that. It's a beautiful country with great energy. I live, I want to tell one story. Last story I share is that when I arrived from India, I was speaking in India, and I arrived going to Namibia last year in February, and I flew in the early morning to Addis, and out of my window was the beautiful sun rising, beautiful sun rising, and I had tears in my eyes, and a voice inside of me said, "You are home." I looked around. I said, "I don't know why. Where is this voice coming from? You are home. I don't know what that means." But I know that when I was in Namibia and came to South Africa, I felt at home. Something inside of my spirit is there. So I invite you all to go nomading. Let's go nomading together. This is my book, which is Nomadic Mindset, is on Amazon and whatever. And some of you will be getting the ebook. But I'm very grateful and thankful to Adria for this wonderful time. And every single one of you, so beautiful to be with all of you. And I have to say, you must go nomading. So I leave this as one thing, as a CEO's reflection. The nomadic mindset took me through a journey of reflection and deeper insight into my leadership style. Kevin invites us to expand our minds to explore what is innate in us and challenges us to live the best nomad in us. This is one of the best leadership books I have ever encountered because it addresses so many aspects in a meaningful and authentic way of how great business needs to be led and organized in order to thrive and flourish. This is what you're after. This is what you get when you start exploring the nomadic mindset. And it's not so easy either. However, it's simple. This is my LinkedIn uh, QR code if you would like to connect with me. And I'm very, very grateful. And I want to thank you so much for everybody for being here. And thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Adria. Really wonderful to be with you.
Thank you, Kevin. And I think if we could all give Kevin a round of applause for that amazing presentation and just for taking us on a journey that I think has come just at the right time with us nearing the end of the year. Many of us are still in or have been in that dark tunnel and need to connect those dots. And I think you've helped all of us a little step further in that today. And I really wish to thank you for that.